Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I have a story that will take you on an emotional roller coaster, filled with love, betrayal and picture this. After 29 years together, including 26 years of marriage, I thought we had the perfect relationship. We supported each other in everything, raising two great kids and built a successful career. But then, everything fell apart in a heartbreaking moment of betrayal. It all started when I decided to surprise my wife with a romantic getaway for our anniversary. I left work early, excited to share the news. But when I got home, I saw a strange car in the driveway. My heart sank, and I knew something was wrong. When I walked through the back door, my dog, usually full of energy, greeted me with sullen eyes. The sounds from our bedroom confirmed my worst fears. In today's video, I tell you every emotional detail about that fateful day and the horrifying discovery that followed. From confronting my wife and her lover to my painful journey to find the truth, this is the story of heartbreak, anger and ultimately my attempt to rebuild my life. You won't want to miss it. Let's dive into it. Remember to like, comment and subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this. And don't forget to hit the notification bell to stay updated with our latest content. Together 29 years married. For those 26 years I am a 51-year-old man, she is a 49-year-old woman, and we have two grown children, a 24-year-old boy years old and a 22-year-old girl. We met in college and fell in love. I got married and built what I believe was a great marriage. We did a lot together, communicated regularly, and resolved any issues. We both had successful careers, so we support each other in our love lives, which is great. Maybe not as often as when we were younger, but just as passionate about IT as she was. And I own a small 75-year-old landscaping company that I founded after graduating. She had been working from home a lot since the epidemic, and we discussed me quitting my job. Daily activities and working part-time so we can spend more time together and travel, especially now that the kids are established. Looking back, there are no red flags. I've read a lot about not having weird texting habits, protecting her phone from any changes in her wardrobe, not having any unusual behavior, and not having a night out with coworkers after work. She usually goes out with friends or family the next day, and someone will always tell me that I should have joined in, but I want her to have her own time, and I like the quiet in the workshop. She always comes home early, so it's safe to say I was surprised to take last week's D-Day for granted. A friend's romantic B&B for our anniversary. It was Winterfest weekend. I left work early to surprise her, telling her to pack for the trip. As I got in the car, I immediately discovered a strange car. I had a feeling, I didn't know why, but I sat there hoping I was wrong, but my intuition told me I wasn't. There he was, contemplating his next move, whether he should leave and face her and pretend he hadn't seen anything. I shake so much I can hardly see when faced with uncomfortable tasks at work. I told myself to try to get over it. Suddenly, my shaking stopped, and I felt strangely calm. I don't know what to do because I'm a wreck inside. I padded, walked in through the back door, and my black lab lay there looking sad as if he knew something was wrong instead of his usual excited, "God." I admire the dog. He's still standing, greeting. As I tiptoed up the stairs to the top, the sounds from our bedroom became clearer. As I approached, the door opened, and I saw her mistress lying on top of my wife. I stopped for a moment before screaming. Writhing, he rolled around trying to get out of bed but ended up entangled in the bed sheet. My wife kept screaming, "Oh my God," trying to cover herself but couldn't because he was still entangled. Finally, he freed himself and caught my head and looked for his clothes on the other side of the bed. I suddenly realized they were right where I usually land because for some reason I hit him and grabbed them. My wife was crying. Bloomed again and again. I apologized. I went back to the door and stood there while he stood next to the naked person. I grabbed the bed, the big armchair in the corner, pulled it to the door, and sat down. He asked for clothes, but I refused and threw my wife's coat hanging on the door, and he started approaching me even at the age of 51. I'm in good shape, 6 feet 3 inches tall, and 240 pounds from years of going to the gym, and the scenery has changed. Help me stay healthy. I looked at him and warned him that if he came any closer, it wouldn't end well for either of us. He would end up in the hospital, and I would go to jail, so why don't you sit down? My wife is there now. Cried into his pillow and sat down after a moment of awkward silence. Next question. How should I answer? I honestly don't know. My wife's crying subsided a bit, and she finally sat up. I took out my phone and announced that you both would spill everything while I recorded it. They exchanged looks, and my wife asked what you meant by everything. I replied exactly that everything was how it started, how long it had been going on, where the hotel was, the dinner, the works, everything my wife insisted on. This was the only time I yelled bullshit. No way you could feel free to take him into our bed if this doesn't make sense. Adultery. If you lie to me again, I'll walk out that door and find a divorce lawyer. She burst into tears again, so the truth came out over the next 10 to 15 minutes. It happened over 9 months. It started with him flirting with her and continued until he bought her lunch and she had a few drinks. Then they stayed in a hotel, and she went to my house. That night, as if nothing had happened, she insisted that it was tearing her apart, and she wanted to confess but didn't know how. Again, I cried foul. They wouldn't have gone on that so easily if it were tearing you apart. They even attended a week-long work conference, which I usually attended with her, so she informed me that company policy had changed and spouses were no longer allowed. I put the phone in my pocket, and the room was silent again. Then, an idea suddenly came to me. I rummaged through his clothes to find his phone and asked for a secret. His code, which, surprisingly, he provided, so I started browsing through his phone. I discovered some photos of a woman. I guessed it was his wife and asked about her name, Carol. She was quite attractive, although not as beautiful as my Ashley. I informed him that I had found many pictures of the kids. He had 3 and, finally, a family portrait of all of them. I held up my phone and remarked, "A lovely family. Why would you risk it all to make love to my wife?" His answer: "What do you mean risk me? Do you believe Carol won't find him? How could she find me?" I was about to call her, but he stood up and protested. "No, you can't," my wife yelled. "Please don't do that to him." I snapped. "Could you not do that to him? You broke me, our family, our friends, our future, and my heart, and you worried about his health." I was shaking again, trying to hide my tears, but I couldn't hold them in anymore. I sat plopped down on the chair and started crying. She tried to get close to me, but I glared at her commanding and kept my distance. After a while, I regained my composure and glanced at his phone again. He begged again. "Please, I beg you. I promise I will tell her you will," I retorted. He stood there begging me not to do that. I located her number and decided a FaceTime call would do more good. She picked up the phone and looked confused, asking, "Who are you?" "My husband? He is fine now, but that is about to change." I moved the camera to show him standing in my wife's robe. I said, "I believe you are familiar with this man. The room he is in is my bedroom. The floral robe he was wearing belonged to this woman." I turned the phone to catch my wife, who was trying to hide under the bedsheet, but it was too late. Today, my wife and I came home early and found them lying in bed together. I really feel sorry for her and terrible about the fact that I revealed this news. She started sobbing, and he tried, "Honey, I'm so sorry. I can explain that it was just a one-time spiel." I advised her not to believe a word he said. It had been going on for over 9 months, and I had spent the last 15 minutes jotting down all the details they were willing to reveal. I assured her that I would text her my contact information, and she would send me an email address so I could forward the video to her. I gave him the phone and overheard her warning that a packed bag would be waiting outside when he got home, and if he tried to come in, she would call me. Police officer, before she hung up, I threw his clothes at him and he walked out after getting dressed. Now it was just me and my wife left. She looked at me and started to cry, apologized profusely. She never intended to hurt me. Can I forgive her? All the typical scammer excuses were nonsense. I stared at her guide to pack up and get out of the house. I went downstairs and poured myself a drink. I was sitting on sofa as she went down the stairs. She started to approach me and I ordered stop. She asked if we could discuss this and I replied maybe, just maybe, but not now. I informed her that it would be extremely difficult to resist finding a divorce lawyer and she started crying again. She looked at me and I could say "and I love you" right on the tip of her tongue. I interjected on "You don't dare say those words right now because I don't think I'll trust them again." More tears fell as she turned around and walked out the door. Seeing her in tears walking out the door, my whole world left collapsing and collapsing on the floor, shaking without stopping crying. I couldn't tell how much time had passed, but eventually I tried to sit up, still in tears, and I called my friend, my closest friend. I tried to speak, but the tears started flowing again, and I couldn't get the words out. He asked what was wrong, but I couldn't answer. He asked if I was home, and I managed a grunt. Yes, and he assured me he would come half an hour later. He was in my living room. I was still in tears. I gave him my phone with the video, and he started the first watch. I couldn't bear to hear it and went to fix both of us a drink. He went to the kitchen, got my drinks, dumped them both down the sink, and said this wouldn't help his friend the most. I decided I couldn't stay here alone tonight and told me to pack my things upstairs. I went back downstairs, and he tied up my experiment, and we went to his place to update everyone who commented that my friend's name was amazing. I couldn't agree more. Because of our long friendship, it was natural for our families to be close. Our children are also friends, and when they were young, we used to go on family camping trips for many years. My wife, Terry, and I became close friends, which had something to do with what happened next. As we drove to his house, I was quiet, and Dan got increasingly angry as we got to his place. Walked in and asked Terry, "Do you know?" She replied with a confused answer, not knowing what made him raise his voice and ask again, "Do you know?" I intervened, telling him to calm down and reminding him that this wasn't his fault. He realized he was out and apologized to Terry with a hug. Now Terry is perplexed. She took my dog out and didn't want to hear it again when it was all over. Terry came out in tears and gave me a long, comforting hug. She took my hand, and we went back inside. The three of us spent the next hour or so talking and crying and talking, all the while on my phone. Was making noise non-stop. As you can guess, it was my wife. I ignored calls and deleted messages without even glancing at them. Then my son rang. He was curious about what was going on with Mom. He was at his place, and his wife claimed that I kicked her out. I asked him to do so, and she told me why. He answered no. I told him to give her the phone, and she needed to explain. He asked why, and I told him I would send him the video if she didn't answer, and then I hung up. About 10 minutes later, my son called back, sobbing as much as she could. Is a series of WTFI going from being sad to being a father comforting him that everything will be okay and that none of this is his fault? His mother would stay the night and quickly end the call. My phone rang again, and this time, it was my daughter. I forgot I asked her to watch the dog while we were supposed to be away for the weekend. She is wondering where Cooper is, my lab as I tell. Her plans have changed, and we won't go, but she can still stay home. Neither of us will be home tonight. She asks if she means both of you. Where are you both? I told her I was at Dan and Terry's house and your mom was home when your brother protested. Dad told me what was going on. I answer. I can't answer right now. I'll stop by tomorrow, and we can talk. Then she kept trying, but I kept refusing, and eventually, she gave up and ended the call. I know exactly where the next calluses will go. Then I ping my son to notify him of an impending call. Next, I phoned my wife, asking her if she was ready to pour the beans for our daughter or if the mission had fallen into my hands. Her answer was nothing but a new wave of tears. I hung up the call, then half an hour later, there was a knock on Dan's door so my daughter could see me. She rushed towards me, and I both broke down in my arms, holding her tightly, not knowing the reason behind our emotional outburst. As we tried to regain composure, I called my wife back to let her know that our daughter I was with me. Again, I asked if she was ready to break the news or if I should put her on speakerphone. My daughter cried out, asking her mother to clarify what she had to reveal, but all she heard was crying more, so I decided to end the call without revealing any details. Then dropped the bombshell. Today, I found out that her mother has been having an affair for the past 9 months. When I thought my pain couldn't lessen the pained look on my little girl's face that made me kneel, she was shaking so much that she couldn't cry. On the floor, a motionless sob. Feeling as if I had failed her when she needed me the most, I didn't even have the strength to move. With tears in his eyes, Terry rushed to safety. He comforted her and promised her that everything would be okay. Dan was also in tears. As I mentioned, our family is so close together that she finally let out this heartbreaking cry that I knew would haunt me forever, even if I lived another century. I finally curled up and hugged both of us. We finally found our way to the couch. Speechless, I asked my daughter if she was okay. She looked at me and said, "Dad, don't worry about me. Are you going to make it?" I tried to cry out. I'll cope." She asked if she could take Cooper with her to the house and if her fiancé, Tim, could come to stay there. Naturally, I said yes. I felt relieved after leaving she would not be alone. Terry angrily says I can't believe she did this and calls her every name under the sun. She calmed down and grabbed the phone, saying she would call her, looking at me, expecting it to be me. I told her to go ahead but put it on speaker so she could call, exchange small talk, etc., etc. In the end, she told her that it was me who called Dan in tears after she left the house. And now I'm there. Terry knows everything. crying more than Terry just to let scold her. What are you thinking? So why didn't you come talk to me before you started on this path? If something is missing, why don't you talk to Mike? You know how much he understands you have. Do you know how many people you've hurt? Darlene, our daughter, just left here. I can't even begin to describe the look on her face when Mike told her that Dan and I would never be able to see you in the same light, too. Terry didn't end the call but just heard her cry after a while. I told Terry to give me the phone. Ashley didn't answer. I called her name again. Ashley finally answered yes. Baby, I retort. You have lost the right to call me. She sobbed even more. I want to know what you are sorry for if I don't come home soon. Do you realize the severity of your actions? Or will you sleep with your boss after we return from the trip, crying more than that? You're not sorry for all the people you hurt, including your boss's family. You're just sorry for getting caught. I ended the call with Dan Terry and chatted more while my phone vibrated non-stop. Finally, I tried to sleep but to no avail. In the morning, I asked Dan to drive me home, hugged Terry, and expressed how much they both meant to me. I told Dan I planned to go to my cabin to find some quiet, and he agreed that it was a wise move since we were staying here. I noticed that amidst the barrage of notifications on my phone, there was a text from my wife's boss's wife expressing her gratitude for disclosure and providing her email address. I forwarded the video and allowed her to reach out if she needed to unload it, which could benefit both of us. I packed my things quietly, not disturbing Darlene and Tim. While loading the truck, I picked up a few of my .22 rifles. Dan questioned my actions, and I explained that I know I usually do some targeting exercises, but he will confiscate them this time. Cooper jumped in and left when we arrived 2.5 hours later. I opened the door and started a fire in the fireplace. Cooper and I went for a walk in the woods, somewhat quiet but not completely. My son called to check on me, and I informed him of my whereabouts. I asked him if his mother wanted to stay home. The house is fine, but she must clean it before I return. He agrees after we go for a walk. Cooper falls asleep by the fire, and I chop wood. It's a great, effective workout. Surprisingly therapeutic with every swing of the axe. I alternated between visualizing my wife's and her boss's faces. I stayed on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. First, I called my office to let them know that I would be out for a while but could be reached in case of the next emergency. I call my lawyer for any legal issues related to the company. My divorce lawyer referral is on Thursday, and I have to meet with a lawyer. I've been in touch with you. I'm on the phone with the bank and asked to put a hold on our joint accounts, followed by canceling all the credit cards and requesting new ones to be sent out. Being alone in the woods helped me better understand my next steps. I found myself shaking again, wondering if it was true. I will get over this or try to save our marriage once I get home. I found this subreddit and started reading other people's stories, which helped, but only briefly in the middle of the week. I went into the office and chatted with my HR manager, and we were about to have a close professional relationship. More personally, I divulged information and asked for advice on approaching their company. She advised me to talk to my lawyer before doing anything. She asked if I would get tested. No, she recommended someone and also said I should see a doctor for an STD test. I called them both and set up an appointment for Thursday. I met with my lawyer and showed her the video this time. I could hear her start shaking her head and asking why people do stupid things. It was so stupid. It turns out she has absolutely no tolerance for cheaters. Her husband cheated on her and dragged her to hell so much that she changed her practice and became a divorce lawyer. She reassured me everything would be fine, and I signed the contract with her. I asked about telling the wives and the HR boss, and she said we should wait until then. I met with my wife. She had taken refuge in at least our son's place. She was also wise enough to understand that I needed some space and not be at home when I returned. I was slumped over on the couch because I couldn't bear to step foot into our bedroom when I needed to get something. Take as many as possible to minimize the number of times I have to go into that room. Thank you for sticking with me so far. It took so long to write this article about my daughter that it brought me to tears for a few hours. I will provide another update next week. Once again, I want to express my deep gratitude for this community's advice and support. I am indebted to each of you in ways I can never repay. All I can do is say thank you and try to respond to all the comments whose support and encouragement have benefited many. If you have commented on the strength I showed during the confrontation, but I feel anything but strong right now. I'm just going through the motions. All the advice has been great and is helping me move forward. The second reason for this post in my original post is because I was looking for help. Trust me, there are many reasons why my first post was deleted. I was told it was because it had too many stories and insufficient support requests. I'll try to be brief, but I believe details are important. I'm starting to accept that there likely won't be any outcome, and I am 99% sure about my decision. Yet, I can't shake the thought that I will give up 29 years of our life together. Even now, I can't steer myself towards type 10 and still consider her my wife. What happened to me on D-Day? She ended up with his wife at our son's place. He called, confused about what was going on and why I kicked her out. I told her she needed to tell her otherwise, she would know I went to my best friend's house. My daughter, who was supposed to be the dog sitter, came home to find the last dog. She went to her friend's house. I want to know what's going on. I told her that the pain on her face was worse than finding my wife in bed with her boss and that it was devastating. She came to our house with the dog, and her fiancé is coming on Saturday morning. Told my friend that I would stay in the cabin for a few days. Could he drop me home? He agreed it was a good idea, so I packed up, took the dog, and spent some time at the cabin walking in the woods and chopping wood. It was good exercise and therapy. I stayed there until Saturday and then drove home on Monday. I started calling bank credit card companies, and a lawyer I use for corporate matters recommended someone I call and meet with on Thursday. I played her the recording, and she was extremely confident, and I hired her. I asked about informing my wife of the human resources boss, and she suggested we hold off. I'm at home, sleeping on the couch. I couldn't get myself into the bedroom except for my clothes. On Friday, my son called to tell me his mom couldn't be there anymore, which was stressful for him and him. Could her wife come home? I hadn't spoken to my wife since D-Day, and I reluctantly agreed she'd come back on Saturday. I went back to the bungalow. It was freezing, but I tried it on Saturday. I went straight to the office. The people there loved my dog, and I was finally pampered. I was going home on Monday night when I saw my wife. All I could see was the image of her in bed with her boss on D-Day. I don't think I'll get over any offer we didn't talk about. I changed and went to my basement office to keep it. I was finally busy. I watched TV in the basement, and she came downstairs and asked if we could discuss it. I told her I wasn't ready and asked her to leave me alone while she was there. I fell asleep in the recliner, woke up early, went to the gym, showered there, and went to the gym. My routine is to come home late for the rest of the week on Friday, and my HR manager checks in on me. I let her know about recent events, and my therapist visited her, who suggested that I stop sleeping on the couch and get a new bed. I thought it was a great idea. I withdrew half of the money from the joint account. The rest was my wife's share. I went to buy a new bed, and delivery was scheduled for Saturday. I waited in the office to get the call that they would arrive in 30 minutes. I stopped to pick up a few extras to deliver to everyone and waited nearby when they arrived. I met them, treated them to lunch, and gave each of them 25 cents to help me. I asked them not to take the old mattress away and if they could return later to pick it up. I asked them to lean against a nearby tree. On the street, they seemed confused, and I told them to give me 5 minutes and come in, and they would understand. I've been thinking about burning the old mattress in the driveway but don't want to clean it up. I went upstairs and took off the sheets while I was doing this. Back to me about what I need to find out. I grabbed a can of Blaze orange spray paint we used to mark the properties we were disposing of and sprayed it in big letters. My wife cheated on me on our bed. The guys walked in, and my wife asked what was going on. I told her I couldn't sleep in that bed anymore and that she had bought me a new bed. She seemed sad but returned downstairs. The new bed was ready, and everyone left the old mattress where I requested. After a while, she informed me that they had left the old mattress in the yard. I replied that they would come back to get it, trying to keep a straight face. I don't think she was caught. Still, the neighborhood must have come to Valentine's Day. She tried to be romantic and initiate intimacy. I turned her down and said I wouldn't accept her offer even if she was the last woman. She replied that we didn't just have sex, but we loved her in a pained voice. I protested that we hadn't been in love since she started sleeping with her boss. She looked surprised. Did she think I forgot? I was completely confused by her thought process. I decided this was the best time to discuss this and asked her to do it while sitting in the living room. I asked her what she would like to do if we tried to patch things up or if we should divorce and move on. I'm not sure why I proposed to my ex. I guess I've been toying with the idea of giving up for 29 years. Convince me otherwise. She insisted she would do anything I asked to rectify the situation and asked for my forgiveness. I told her that she needed to confess to everyone in our family, starting with her parents and my mother, including the details of how I discovered the affair our children were having. We still don't know about this detail. They are visiting tonight. I will provide an update on how it goes. That's my current situation. I'm still shocked at everything and constantly fighting the urge to confront my boss. However, I still need advice on when things will improve or if this is my new reality update. Update that night. My mother and my father passed away 3 years ago, and her parents, sister, and brother-in-law came to visit, and we all sat in the living room. I made sure to sit as far away from her as possible. They started with comforting words. "What's up? We love you. Everything will be okay? Let's say someone is seriously ill." I glanced at her and said, "This story will not tell itself." Her dad looked at me, and I swear his eyes were saying "oh no" as if he sensed what was about to happen. I must give her credit. She confessed everything in tears, including the part about me getting into our bed. After a long, uncomfortable silence, She begged someone to say something. I said back to them. Say you are a terrible person, that you have hurt me more than you can imagine, tore my heart apart, thrown away 29 years, and ruined our family, not to mention the damage what you two did to his family was sex that was truly worth all the anger, hatred and betrayal I kept holding in and pouring it out. I didn't know I could be so harsh that her mother finally said enough was enough. She agreed that she deserved it all and ran upstairs crying. Her mother tried to follow her, but her dad said not to leave her alone. She needed to suffer for a while before things could get better. We chatted for a bit. They offered support and let me know if I needed anything. I just needed to ask. I told them I had been to see a counselor and thought I would be fine, but I appreciated their offer. I told them that despite everything, I still loved her and that she would need them more than me. I went to bed and slept better than I had since D-Day. The next morning before I left, went into the guest room and said she hadn't slept and had been crying all night. I truly believe that for the first time since D-Day, the gravity of what was happening finally made her tell her family and be as angry with her as I was. I thought it was dead. She was out of the fog of love. She looked remorseful. I told her we needed to talk, and I did more talking than she listened. I explained that I was 99, leaning towards a separation kiss, but I was still clinging to the 1% life raft, wondering if there was any hope. What should she do? I asked them to help me through this. She said she would do anything to please don't do anything. I reminded her of the story I told her when my father passed away when I was 17, in which he shared some wisdom with me. He said you will face difficult times in life, but how you handle them says a lot about your character. Never make important decisions when you are upset. I brushed it off. Normally, yes, Dad, whatever. I started crying, saying how much I wished he was here to tell him I was listening. She stood, got up, and hugged me. I didn't respond, but it felt good. It made me uncomfortable. She sat down, and I told her she needed to move. I can't make it work if I see her daily, which we must do. There was no contact. She agreed and asked what else she could do. I told her I was too emotional to think straight, but I'll let her know on the way to work. I called my lawyer and made an appointment with her. She was free today so that we could meet her for coffee. I'll update her on everything, the 99 to 1% dilemma, etc. I asked her to prepare divorce papers in case I decided to move on. She suggested that if I could afford it, I should find an apartment for my wife and pay the first month's rent, which would show good faith if things went to court. I agreed and she said there would be something for me to review on Monday. I called a real estate broker we had worked with for many years, explained the situation and what I needed, and he referred me to a leasing agent who found an appropriate point. I will meet with the property manager to pay the deposit for February and March. When I get home, I tell my wife about the apartment I paid for and that she needs to meet with the manager and sign the lease, which is a 6-month lease, which seems like an added plus. She was surprised at how quickly I acted and that I needed her not to come home while our children were away. I arranged for the movers to come on Saturday. When she came home, I told her about the move and asked why she didn't ask about the financial problem finance. I informed her that I cancelled the credit card from which I withdrew half of our joint account and cancelled the debit card. She seemed angry but admitted that she did not blame me. It turned out she didn't need to spend anything because she was dividing her time between her residence and our son's residence. She also revealed that she requested time off work due to personal issues, which allowed her to take paid vacation in advance on Friday. I told her she could bring whatever she needed to the new place, leaving me only a few essentials and nothing from the basement or any heirlooms and the new bed. I also told her that I am available for marriage counseling and that she should find 3 different counselors, and I will choose the one I think is best. I left early on Saturday morning and returned to an empty house. Half, including TV, is okay. Anyway, I wanted a larger one. My friend still had mine, so I stopped by to get my favorite bourbon and enjoyed a glass while typing. Sorry this took so long. Thanks for reading this. Tomorrow, I will exercise, make my favorite chili, and buy a new TV. I am sure I will have more posts in the future. Thank you.